This is part one of a two-part story about me getting hit in Vietnam and coming home. Prior to going over, we were given our injections and inoculations, etc., and sent on a week's pre-embarkation leave. The idea of that was so that you would say, goodbye to your family, friends, etc., and then go back to base. And we were expecting to be away for a year, so you were given that time to sort of say goodbye. I first went to Narrabri, where Danny was, and I spent some time there with him, and he had a truck that he wanted to send to Billy in Inverell. I drove the truck across to Moree, saw Tibby on the way through, and then went to Inverell where Billy was and gave him the truck. We then both using the truck, went to Uralla. There was a Thunderbolt festival on at the time, and all the family were there, and I got to see everybody. While I was there, I got Brian aside, and I told him I was going to make him my next of kin while I was over there. Just in case I got hit, wounded or dead or whatever, and he'd be the first one notified. But I asked him, that if it wasn't serious, to keep it to himself, not to tell anybody. But naturally, if it was serious, it passed on to the rest of the family. I had also given him all my civilian clothes. To tell Brian something like that was like putting it in a safety deposit box in a bank. It would never go any further. As anyone in the family knows that if you told Brian something and asked him to keep it to himself, well, it was as far as it ever went. When the festival finished, Mum and myself got a lift down to Newcastle with Loris and Louie. Dad and Billy and Jim was going to follow the next day in the truck. I'm not sure. I think I spent the night with Mum at Georgetown, and then we went down to Broadmeadow, and I got on the train back to Holsworthy. And as I mentioned before, in one of the earlier recordings, it was a closed camp from when I went in, and nobody was allowed to go out. But I'm not going to go into all that part now. This story is about later on over there. We landed over there in the middle, when I say middle, about in early June. And but this story takes place in the following March, 1966. So at the end of February, we went out into an area called Hobo Woods. It was in War Zone D, which was a bad area, a really bad area. And we were doing search and destroy operations, as all our operations were. And on the 5th of March, I know the date, but it was the 5th of March 1966. We're walking through the jungle. There was a lot of gunfire going on, and we were pretty much under fire and naturally fighting back, etc. But I felt a whack in my chest, knocked me over backwards, and I landed in a sitting position against me packs with a machine gun across my knees. Because when you're on the move like that out there, you always carried all your gear with you. I looked down at my chest and I could see blood on my shirt. It wasn't gushing out or bleeding fast or spurting or anything, but it was spreading on my shirt. But look, within minutes, maybe seconds, there was a couple of blokes there and they'd pull the pack off and shirt and whatever and put a full dressing around the wound and pulled it down tight, stopped the bleeding. We all carried field dressings with us. I then had one of the medics gave me an injection. It would have been morphine. They put a strap around in under my arms, across my back and under my arms, and come out of the front and hooked up, and they tied my arms down my sides. Then they connected the strap to this hook coming down through the jungle and going up to a helicopter. I was winched up through a hole in the canopy. As soon as I cleared the trees, the helicopter took off flat out. I was told later the reason they do that is that the closer you are to the trees and the faster they travel, the less chance that anyone's got time to take aim or take a shot at you. But as I was going, I must have been turning because I could see trees, sky, like that. When I got up to the helicopter, the guy working the winch swung me round into the helicopter, reached over and unbuckled everything and checked the dressing. But within, 5 minutes, we come in and landed at a MASH unit. Now, if anyone's watched that show MASH on television, it was pretty much like that. They all laughing and joking and carrying on as spirits. I'm quite sure all that's to do with stopping people from going into shock. Then I was on an operating table within minutes of landing, and this doctor was furling around with I think they're called forceps. It was like a big pair of tweezers. And I felt him bump against something in my chest, and I right in my brisket. And he pulled it out and washed it, and it was a bullet. It was all mangled, but it had green wood sort of jammed in it. And he said to me then, he said, you were lucky. Also, he said, It was a spent round. Now, I didn't know what a spent round was, and I asked him, and he said, it's gone through a tree or a branch, most likely a tree, which has taken off all the impact from the bullet, and then hit me, and that's where the wood came from. But he said, if it had hit you directly, you'd have been dead. But he said, so you're lucky. But he stitched me up and put the dressings and stuff on, and I was pretty much out of it because of the injections I'd had and whatever, and I was then sent another helicopter back to Field Hospital at Benoit. It was just a whopping beat tent with rows of beds and whatever, and there was 100 guys there, Americans, and there was a few Australians there at the same time. And I wasn't talking to anyone, but I spent that first night there, and there was nurses and doctors just going around checking people, and I was okay. Following day, there would have been about just around lunchtime, before lunchtime, this one-star general came in, and he was carrying a box of Purple Hearts, and he had a buck sergeant with him, and the doctor was with him as well, and they were just going from bed to bed. And some of the guys were in a bad way and unconscious and whatever, and he would just put a Purple Heart alongside him on the bed, and the sergeant was writing down their particulars as he came along the tent. When he came to me, he just said, how are you going, Ozzy? And I said, I'm all right, sir. And he reached out and passed me Purple Heart. And then he turned to the sergeant and just said GSW, which meant gunshot wound. They then went on, continued on seeing the other people and doing the same thing. I stayed another night there and then went back to the battalion, our battalion area, and it was being looked after by another American unit. It could have been the Big Red 1 Infantry Division or the 7th Cavalry or somebody like that. Every time we went out, another unit had to come in and fill in for us there. But I just wandered around our area and laid about there, and I was having the dressings changed every day by our medic, but I just wandered around there until our guys come in about. I suppose it might have been 4 days, a week later, something like that. And I'll go on now with the second part of the tape after this one.